History rarely forgets the powerful, the emperors who crowned themselves gods, the conquerors who burned cities into legend, the tyrants whose names echo with infamy. But empires aren't built by legends. They're held together by something more fragile and more human: duty, loyalty, sacrifice. Rome was no different. For 1,000 years it expanded, bled, broke, and rose again, carried on the shoulders of men and women who never made it into the marble statues or triumphal arches. We know Augustus, we remember Caesar, but do we remember the man who saved Rome from Attila the Hun? Do we remember the plebeian who fought more battles than most emperors combined? The engineer who kept the aqueducts flowing while emperors basked in decadence? Or the general who conquered Britain and was erased by his jealous emperor? These are their story. These are the forgotten Rome heroes of ancient empires. Let's begin not with an emperor, but with a soldier, born poor, born plebeian, born to fight. His name was Lucius Sicinius Dentatus. The ancient sources, rare and biased as they are, call him the Roman Achilles, a man who, by the end of his life, had fought in 120 battles, received 18 wounds to the front of his body, and won no fewer than 34 military decorations. Dentatus came of age in the early Republic during the 5th century BCE, a brutal time. Rome was not yet an empire, but a city-state clawing its way toward dominance over Italy. The patricians ruled everything, and plebeians were often used as infantry fodder, denied land, status, or political power. But Dentatus was different. He survived, and he excelled. His bravery in battle was so legendary that he became a symbol among the plebeians, not just a warrior, but a voice. He spoke in the assemblies, he criticized injustice, he stood against corruption, and that made him dangerous. Some historians believe he was assassinated under orders from patrician rivals, not for failure, but for being too respected, too admired by the common soldier. His name does not appear on monuments. No Roman forum bears his statue. But Lucius Sicinius Dentatus may have fought more fiercely and more often for Rome than any man before him. He was proof that courage was not a patrician virtue, and that Rome's strength was born in the ranks. Centuries later, during the reign of Nero, another hero would rise, one far from the heart of Rome. His name was Gnaeus Domitius Corbulo, and he was a general of impossible discipline. In a time when Nero's court was a theater of cruelty, vanity, and paranoia, Corbulo was the last of the old guard, a man who believed in honor, order, and the mission of Rome itself. He was sent to the east, to the volatile frontiers of Armenia and Parthia, lands that had buckled lesser generals. There he re-established Roman authority without unnecessary bloodshed. His campaigns were so precisely executed, so masterfully planned, that even enemy commanders respected him. He trained his troops relentlessly, sometimes forcing them to rebuild fortifications just to maintain discipline. His famous order was simple: you carry arms not to strike, but to obey. But Nero feared him. His popularity, his loyalty from the troops, his reputation, they were threats to a fragile ego. And so, on one imperial visit, Nero summoned Corbulo aboard his ship. There were no charges, no trial, only a dagger. Corbulo bowed, asked permission to die as a Roman, and fell on his sword. He was mourned by legions, admired by his enemies, and remembered only in passing by the historians who survived Nero's reign. Rome lost a brilliant general that day, and it was not Parthian steel that killed him, it was politics. Even in peace, the empire needed guardians, not with swords, but with water, roads, fire prevention, and food supply. Enter Sextus Julius Frontinus, Rome's water commissioner in the late 1st century CE.
At the time, over 1 million people lived in Rome. Without clean water, without infrastructure, that city would rot. Disease, fire, collapse, all constant threats. But Frontinus transformed public engineering into an art. He tracked every aqueduct. He exposed illegal water tapping by the wealthy. He mapped routes, improved maintenance, and documented everything. His work De Aquis Orbis Romani remains one of the most detailed technical texts from antiquity. What he did wasn't glorious. He didn't conquer lands or win triumphs, but Rome flowed because of him. The fountains, the baths, the gardens, the sanitation, all lifeblood of the city, owed their efficiency to a forgotten bureaucrat who chose integrity over indulgence. The next figure stood at the edge of the known world, in Britannia, wild and unruly. His name was Gnaeus Julius Agricola. He was a Roman general and the father-in-law of the historian Tacitus. Unlike others who sought glory by burning villages and parading slaves, Agricola built, negotiated, and planned with brilliance.
Sent to govern Britain in 77 CE, he pushed further north than any Roman before him. He reached the Caledonian frontier, modern Scotland, and won a stunning victory at Mons Graupius. But his genius wasn't just in battle. He developed roads, built Romanized towns, and encouraged the education of native elites, integrating them into the empire's system. But Agricola's success stirred resentment back in Rome. Emperor Domitian, paranoid and hungry for credit, recalled him. Agricola retired in silence. No public disgrace, no assassination, just removal. Tacitus would later write, he was allowed to die. A quiet death for a man who brought a wild province to heel and left it more stable, more connected, and more Roman than he found it. Not every hero fought with armor. Some defended Rome's soul from within. One such woman was Aelia Pulcheria, a princess, regent, and power broker during the decline of the Western Empire. Living in the early 5th century CE, Pulcheria took a vow of virginity to avoid being married off as a political pawn. She ruled in her brother's name, Theodosius II, and later became Augusta in her own right. She oversaw palace affairs, coordinated imperial marriages, negotiated with bishops, and played a critical role in shaping the religious policies of the Eastern Roman Empire. She promoted orthodoxy during the turbulent theological wars, funded the building of churches, and negotiated peace with the Huns. Yet her contributions are often overshadowed, reduced to religious commentary, or dismissed by male chroniclers as meddling. But Pulcheria governed during a time when Rome's political center was fracturing. She kept it together, quietly, with conviction and clarity. The empire endured, in part, because she did not yield. But perhaps no hero is more deserving of remembrance than the man who stopped Attila the Hun and then was murdered by the emperor he served. His name was Flavius Aetius. His title, Magister Militum, the Master of Soldiers. During the twilight years of the Western Roman Empire, when provinces broke away and barbarian tribes pushed into imperial territory, Aetius held the line. He was once a hostage in the court of the Huns and used that time to understand them. He returned to Rome with insight, forged alliances, and began rebuilding the shattered legions. His finest hour came in 451 CE at the Battle of the Catalonian Plains. There, Aetius led a coalition of Romans and Visigoths to halt the advance of Attila, the most feared warlord of the age. The battle was brutal, chaotic, and costly, but Rome held. Attila retreated, and Europe was saved, for a time. You might expect Aetius to be celebrated, paraded through Rome, showered with honors. Instead, Emperor Valentinian III feared his popularity. He invited Aetius to court under false pretenses and personally stabbed him to death in front of his guards. One Roman official is said to have asked the emperor afterward, "You have cut off your right hand with your left."
And so Aetius, the man who held the empire together for decades, was buried without honor, forgotten by the very state he saved. These men and women, these guardians of Rome, fought battles of steel and battles of silence. They governed provinces, built systems, stopped invasions, engineered lifelines, and sacrificed everything, often at the hands of the people they served. They didn't build empires for glory, they didn't command applause, but their footprints remain, in the aqueducts still standing, the walls still stretching, the books still preserved, and the provinces that became nations. Rome did not fall in a day, and it was not built by Caesars alone. It stood for 1,000 years because of forgotten heroes whose stories now rise from the shadows. Their courage deserves remembrance. And now it's up to us to speak their names.